Hello and welcome back to My Mom's Basement. It is Robbie Fox once again with AEW's Tony Khan. Tony, of course, joining me ahead of Dynamite's 3-year anniversary show this Wednesday, where AEW Dynamite returns to where it all started, Washington, D.C. How are you, Tony?
I'm great, Rob. How are you, man?
I'm doing well. I'm really excited for this Wednesday's show, and I remember watching the first Dynamite like very vividly. What do you remember the most about that night putting on the first Dynamite? Were you nervous? Were you just excited? How did you feel?
It was a great night. I remember we thought we hit a home run, and I think it was. It was a tremendous show, and it stands the test of time. And I think people still look back on it as a great first show. And a lot of the great stars of AEW were launched that night. And in the 3 years past, we built a lot of other new stars. And I'm more excited now than I've ever been about this week. And it's just going to be an awesome time with the AEW 3-year anniversary. So I'm very excited about having, for the first time ever, 4 hours and 15 minutes of live AEW programming this week, because Wednesday night on TBS, we've got 2 hours and 15 minutes for the first time ever, an extra 15-minute overrun. The show always starts at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central on TBS, and normally goes 2 hours, but we have a 15-minute XL overrun. Very excited. And also, for the first time on Friday night, we're going to have 2 live hours, which is pretty cool. And it'll be a live AEW Rampage followed by live Battle of the Belts. And I'm just really excited about AEW in general. It's a good time for us. And so that's why I'm excited to catch up with you. Although I'm sad I didn't get to catch up with you at your show, because I was going to come see your band, and that I wasn't able to. I'm
Ocean's
sorry.
Calling, yeah, it got canceled. We're gonna have to do it next year. That bill was so much fun. There were so many good bands on that bill. Unfortunately, the hurricane, pushed it.
Yeah, it was yeah, it was a very unfortunate situation. And the hurricane, I think, affected so many people in so many ways.
Not
So
Shane Helms, by the way. We're not talking about Shane Helms. We're talking about real hurricane here.
I would have really enjoyed coming to see your show and your band. So I'm sorry I missed you. I'll have to see you in New York.
Yeah, yeah. Check out Pup Punk if you're listening to
I
this
have,
and
like, no,
you're
I
no, no,
have
no, I
checked
know. I'm
out.
talking to the people. If we're coming to your city, it's a fun show. It's like a party show. We do covers mostly.
I didn't know you were like breaking the fourth wall.
Yeah,
I,
yeah, yeah.
that's cool. So yeah, man, it's great to catch up with you. But like I said, I was hoping to see you at your show, and it looks like your band's going really well though, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's going all right. It's a fun, crazy like party band, cover band. It's fun. We do all songs that people know. But back to Dynamite.
Thank you.
Speaking of the 2-hour Rampage, is that something that you would consider moving towards in the future? Because it seems like fans love talking about who's getting used on Dynamite, who's getting used on Rampage, and when. And I'm sure that's hard to manage yourself. So, one, how do you manage it? And two, would you work towards a 2-hour Rampage? Would you ever consider a brand split, stuff like that?
Well, I was just speaking with the Warner Brothers Discovery executives who were really excited about last week's results, because it's been a really strong run. We are on the best run of Dynamite ratings. The best 6 weeks we've had all year have been the last 6 weeks. And I think it's been in large part due to, obviously, most of all, the great support from the wrestling fans, but also the wrestlers. Right now, we have a great crew. We have great champions, great contenders up and down the card, and now great stories coming into place, because this has been the most stable TV crew we've had, I would say, the last 5-6 weeks all year. There's been so many different injuries. Obviously, the hurricane kept a few people out this past week that are prominent names, but that's a 1 week thing, and normally that would be terrible, catastrophic. But really, first of all, you got to look, the hurricane itself was the priority, and people need to take care of their families and their homes. But it's just a 1 week blip compared to some of the major injuries and incidents that put people out for longer periods of time. So frankly, the last 5-6 weeks have not only been the best TV ratings of the year for us, the best business period of the year for us, it's the perfect time to be going into the anniversary with this great support, doing 2 hours and 15 minutes on TBS live for the first time ever with the XL overrun locked in. And they've been kind to give us overruns sometimes in the past, but 15 minutes is unprecedented, and people can plan for it now. and it should be a great. It's great timing too, because the TV roster, like I've been saying, it's just been great. We've had young stars come into place. We've had some of the top stars stepping up, and it's been stable. You've seen a lot of the top stars consistently week to week, which we weren't able to do, not because I would feature them, but a lot of them weren't here. So it's great timing now, and it's a great time in the company, and I think a great time in the wrestling business. So it's a great time to be a wrestling fan.
Absolutely. I think the last 3 years have been a great time to be a wrestling fan because of Dynamite and other things as well. But I want to look back at the last 3 years of Dynamite now and ask you, do you have a favorite episode, one that sticks out as an overall favorite Dynamite?
Yeah, I think the best episode we've ever done is the tribute to the late great Mr. Brody Lee, and that's the most personal episode to me. It took place like about half the episodes right behind me in Daly's place, and I think it's one of the best things we've ever done. I think it's the best thing we've ever done. It's the best wrestling show I've ever seen, and it was done for a great man who everybody says the same thing about Brody Lee, is that his name's John in real life. And everybody said the same thing about John, about Brody. This guy loved his family and he loved pro wrestling. And everyone says that. It's like no matter who it is. And it's true. And he loved a lot of other things too. Hockey. He's a great guy. And everybody was very sad to see him pass. And we try to honor his memory to this day. And actually, the 2-year anniversary of his last wrestling match, which was a pretty insane dog collar match against Cody Rhodes, and it was an awesome match on Dynamite on October 7th. We're going to celebrate the 2-year anniversary with a really big match that's got a lot of people talking, and it's one of the stories that people are fired up. So on AEW Rampage, as part of the 2-hour live block at 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central on Friday night Rampage, that is going to be a really interesting situation with the Dark Order to see what's going to happen with Vance, number 10, putting up the mask that Mr. Brody Lee gave him in the pandemic 2 years ago, and really has built him into a TV wrestling star that was handpicked by Brody himself. And to have Vance going up against Andrade El Idolo, and Andrade El Idolo is a very oppressive boss. We've seen a number of people who don't want to work for him. He's just a terrible guy. And he's a great wrestler. Nobody can deny his great talents, Andrade El Idolo. But, people really want to get out of LFI. And so it's an interesting situation there. We've seen, Matt Hardy was really reconnected with Private Party, who are still under a contract to Andrade that Andrade bought. And that's an interesting situation, too. We saw Ethan Page call out, of course, that there was contract tampering happening on the part of Matt Hardy and Private Party, which is a situation to follow. So there's a lot of interesting stuff happening there. Very excited. Christian Cage, unfortunately, is out injured, which is terrible timing, which I was talking about all these injuries, but Luchasaurus is back in action. So on Wednesday Night Dynamite on TBS, just coming up on this big anniversary show, Luchasaurus is somebody who's changed a lot over the 3 years. He got to the very top of pro wrestling as a world tag team champion with Jungle Boy, and now he's thrown it all away, thrown the friendship away. And it'll be interesting to take a look at what Luchasaurus has become 3 years in. Very excited for that. And also, one of the really big matches on the card, we have Hangman Page, who is a former AEW World Champion, former AEW World Tag Team Champion, one of the most decorated stars we've ever had, and been featured as a top star from day one. And now going into this big match, coming off his win in the Grand Slam Golden Ticket Battle Royale, and then now with a shot against John Moxley, potentially with MJF looming over the World Championship also with a shot whenever he wants. And then in Cincinnati, of course, on October 18th, on a very special October 18th is a Tuesday, and it's a Tuesday night Dynamite. So it's going to be a bit of a throwback feel to speaking of the 3-year anniversary. That'll be kind of a fun night, and gonna go in there with the World Championship on the line. And Hangman Page here on the anniversary show has a very big match in front of him against one of the top stars in AEW, a former 2-time Ring of Honor World Champion, and one of the great stars in Lucha Libre, who's been red hot in AEW lately, Roosh. Roosh was in the final 2 of the Battle Royal with Hangman. He attacked Hangman early, and we'd seen the prior week, there's been a situation with Andrade trying to, of course, as we mentioned, he's been involved with number 10 of the Dark Order. He tried to recruit him originally, and now they have this big match where Vance is very loyal to the Dark Order, and Brody Lee, and this mask is a huge part of who he is. And we've seen Andrade is a terrible guy. So if Andrade loses this match, he would leave AEW forever. And frankly, the way things have gone with Andrade, the way things have carried on, I think a lot of people might not mind that. But it'll be an interesting situation to follow. So I think that's another big storyline and a big match to keep an eye on. And Hangman Page is directly involved in it, because we saw, of course, he ducked and dodged, as Jose pulled up the footage, ducked and dodged Jay Lethal's drop kick that was meant for Hangman. So that's something to keep an eye on also. And Hangman Page, of course, and Roosh, they went head to head at the end of this battle royal, and I just thought it was such exciting action when they went toe to toe. And then after Roosh defeated John Silver in the main event of AEW Rampage this week, Roosh is officially all elite, as we announced. It seems like a great match for our anniversary show. So that's a match I'm really excited about in that situation with Hangman and the Dark Order and Los Faction and Gobernables, something to keep an eye on. But Roosh is somebody who's red hot and has done really, really well, that has been a top featured star in recent weeks here on the anniversary show and also on Grand Slam. So, it's something to keep an eye on. We've, signed him. And if Andrade were to lose this match, I think Roosh could be a great leader for LFI. He's a former 2-time Ring of Honor world champion. So a lot of interesting things happening there. And those big matches on Dynamite and Rampage will be some of the good ones.
I'm looking forward to them. Over the last 3 years, do you think you could name a behind-the-scenes MVP for AEW Dynamite? I loved when the Ultimate Warrior came out with the idea of the initial Warrior Award, when he said like it would go to someone that doesn't usually get shouted out, someone we don't see on TV every week, someone behind the scenes. So is there anyone that you would say they were the MVP for this?
Yeah, I think Andrew Thomas, who people might remember as a former referee. I think Andrew does a ton throughout the week. Tim Walbert, our director, and Andrew Thomas, who's a supervising producer, and Kevin Sullivan and his team in Nashville, and numerous people throughout the production team that don't get shouted out enough. But there's a lot of work that goes into Dynamite and Rampage and all the pay-per-views, and a big team there that those people lead. So Tim and Andrew and Kevin, Daryl Marshall, and a lot of other people. And this goes back to a great team that Keith Mitchell helped put together. Keith Mitchell is one of the first people I ever hired, and he retired at the end of 2021. And I love Keith very much. And
He's a legend in the wrestling business.
He's a legend in the wrestling business. Absolutely. And he, of course, worked in World Class Championship Wrestling in Texas, and then went on for over 12 years of WCW, the final 12 years of WCW, from 1989 to 2001, and was managing the production there and producing all the TV and pay-per-views, and then was doing it for Impact for a long time, and came to AEW, and from day one. And Keith was one of the 2 first people I hired, and helped put a great team together. And Andrew does so much on the production and in post-production. Jim Morris, Christie, and so many other people that I could name, and I'll come back and I'll do part 2 if you'd be kind enough to ask me this question again.
Of course. I'd love to ask you about some of the Grand Slam surprises we got as well. Saraya and the Great Muta, they were both awesome, got great responses from the crowd. How and when did both of them come together?
Well, so they came together very differently. Great Muta, we've been talking about for a long time. And it was funny because Mox brought it up in the press conference and we were already talking about it. And I was like there with New Japan. So I was kind of like, I don't know if this is like the best time, but like it was like we were already working on it. But like, yeah, the timing was very good. I originally wanted to get Muta for All Out, and he was not available, and then it just seemed like a great idea for Grand Slam, and
Are you a
everybody.
fan personally? Is that why you wanted him so bad? Fan of
Yeah,
the Sting Muta feud?
yeah. It's the first time I ever saw Muto was on the Great American Bash 1989, and not only does he have the great match with Sting, but the schmaz to end Great American Bash 1989 is so fun. I'm sure you've seen it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. It's like the Sting Muta match. The conclusion is not very satisfying, but the end of the show, Flair Funk is a great match, and then when the four guys, Flair and Funk and Sting and Muta, all fight around the arena in Baltimore, that was really, really great. And that's one of my favorite wrestling tapes and one of my favorite wrestling memories. And to have Sting and Muta together on the show, I thought it would be really cool. And I think they're linked together as rivals, and they've teamed up many times. And it's a huge part of history and WCW on American TV previously, but also in New Japan Pro Wrestling. And so with our partnership with New
They had the
Japan.
crossover show. They had a match on WCW New Japan crossover show.
Yeah.
Was
Yeah.
that 91 or something, I want to say?
The super shows were really cool shows.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great matches. Hase and Sasaki against the Steiners is a great match. That's one of the best. But there's a lot of other fun matches too. I like the Flair Fujinami match from Japan better than the match probably from Super Brawl 1. Super Brawl 1 is actually the first WCW show I ever saw. And
Oh,
talk
wow.
about a good one to get hooked
That'll
on.
hook you. Yeah.
Yeah, it was so good. The Steiners against Sting and Lex, what a great match. And so many other great things on the card to get me into that show and get me watching wrestling on TBS and then TNT for many years. And now to be able to have AEW bring that to people every week on Wednesdays on TBS and Fridays on TNT, I think it's a great thing. And it's been kind of the most challenging year in many ways yet, because I think we actually kind of got the stability of the roster back pretty quick in the pandemic. It was nobody knew what was happening in the world early in 2020, but everybody pretty much came back within a few months, and we had a stable crew that we built up and had more success coming out of the pandemic. And this year with people being gone, finding that stability with the crew, it was really, really gratifying to have this run where we've done our best ratings of the year and had 5 consecutive shows do over 1 million total viewers for the first time since the same exact period last year, but also build up and have these great streaks. We did 17 straight weeks in the top 2 on cable, and most of the 17 weeks we were the number 1 show on cable. And Wednesday nights, I think we've carved a really good space out on TBS. And now we have really exciting opportunities on Friday night with Rampage. I've spoke to the Warner Brothers Discovery executives about it, and they were really excited about the performance of Grand Slam and the performance of a second hour. And that's pretty cool. And now we're getting a chance to try a second hour live with Battle of the Belts this week. So it's just a perfect time for everything to really click in AEW.
And just speaking of the great year that AEW has had, I want to point out who I think the MVP of AEW television was this year is Jon Moxley. An unbelievable year from Moxley, and I was glad that he got to have the title reigns in front of the crowd after he had the amazing pandemic title reign, but obviously it was limited without those full sold out crowds. He has had just an unreal year.
Yeah, man, he's been unbelievable. I think Jon Moxley this year is absolutely, unquestionably somebody to be considered a top candidate for AEW's most valuable player MVP. And definitely so many great matches, so many great moments with Mox, and what a great champion. And the Grand Slam Tournament of Champions was a huge success for AEW. And Jon Moxley was a great winner. The final match with John Moxley versus Bryan Danielson was tremendous. I think Bryan Danielson versus Chris Jericho, tremendous, and Mox versus Sammy versus Darby, and
It
Danielson
was
versus
all good. Yeah, it was a good tournament.
Danielson versus Hangman, all great matches. And it came at a great time for us. And everybody involved in that tournament is a really important star, and they all had great credentials as champions to qualify them for that tournament of champions. So that was a big success for us. And in addition to Mox, who's such a great champion and has been an amazing top guy for us this year, Chris Jericho is having the best year of his career. So I think if Chris Jericho is having the best year of his career, then you have to consider Chris Jericho for the MVP too. And he's the other world champion in AEW right now. He's the Ring of Honor world champion, or the Ring of Jericho world champion. It's the 8th world championship for Chris Jericho. I've been watching Chris Jericho for over 27 years, going on 28 years now. And he's one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. And it wasn't me saying this. It was like scrutinizing wrestling fans who are like really cynical that I was around recently. And they were not just saying it to pacify me, that, man, Chris Jericho, the run he's on, and it's unprecedented. And isn't it amazing how he's come in this year? I mean, he's lost 31 pounds. So that is visually almost jarring to see the Chris Jericho we remember from a decade ago or 2 decades ago. And the things he's done this year, you talk about reinvention, but he's been able to do it in a completely unexpected way. John Moxley, the other great MVP name, is the person who actually came up with the idea for Chris to bring Lionheart back this year, which I loved, because now it was time to do it. I don't think it would have made sense to do it a year or 2 years ago, or even at the beginning of AEW. And Chris looks like the best he's looked. When you saw the side-by-side of how ripped Chris is and what he looked like as Lionheart, so many people were like, wow, Chris looks better now. He looks awesome. He's ripped. And I think it's with all the weight loss and Chris, his diet, he's talked about it. He did an interview in GQ. So he went into detail about what he did with eating 8 small meals. And he just did a complete 180 in terms of how he treated his diet, because he wasn't eating good at all. I spent a lot of time with Chris, and I can tell you he was not eating good before. And he eats so great now. And I love what he's doing. And so that's why I bring it forward, because I think the match he just had with Bandito, there was so much crazy shit in that match, dude. It was fucking awesome. And I believe now, similar to, Bandito isn't going to come in and necessarily do the same kind of viewership as an established star like Darby Allin or Bryan Danielson or even Jungle Boy, some people who've been on TV a long time and do numbers. I think what we're doing with Bandito is giving a young star a great opportunity. And I really like him and had worked with him a little bit in Ring of Honor previously. And that's where I gotten to meet him. And in particular with Jericho, that Bandito match, I mean, the amount of crazy stuff, the variety of great moves. You see Chris wrestling at such a high level, but then he came in, and what a vintage Chris Jericho promo segment the Ocho celebration was. And, the segment was basically the first quarter hour, and that was like 1.2 million and a huge number in the demo. There's a huge amount of interest in what Chris is doing right now. It's awesome. And if I had to pick four singles matches of Chris's that are my favorite this year, I think I would say versus Eddie Kingston at Revolution, versus John Moxley at Quake by the Lake, the Lionheart Chris Jericho. I would say versus Bryan Danielson in the Tournament of Champions. And I would say versus Bandito last week in Chris's first defense of the Ring of Honor World Championship on Dynamite. So I do think, I would certainly consider Chris up there too as one of the MVP candidates in AEW.
And we've heard a lot, like rumors about him stepping up as a backstage leader this year. Can you speak at all to him stepping up in that role? I mean, obviously, I assume he's been that from the start for AEW, because he's one of the early veterans that was in that locker room.
Yeah, Chris, I mean, he's stepped up in every way this year. Chris has always been a huge part of AEW. I think it's a microcosm of what Chris has done this year. You know, just as he stepped up on screen, you can see it on his face and in his body and in his wrestling and the quality of matches, which is some of the best matches we've ever seen Chris in this year. He had the 5-star match in the Anarchy in the Arena that he was a huge part of. And like the 4 matches I just named, I think any one of those you could consider whatever, 4.5, 5 stars. And certainly I think you'd be underselling some of those to give him 4.5, frankly, like the Quake by the Lake or the Eddie match or the Bryan Danielson match or the Bandito match. They were all great. So I loved all of them. I mean, those are all some of my favorite wrestling matches this year, frankly. So he's come in at such a high level on screen. And I think that could probably give you an idea. He's also stepped up his game backstage, you know, trying to help other people with their interviews. And then if he sees somebody that needs help, he'll go and try to help them. And I think that's really cool. And for a lot of people, either in the ring or backstage, that mentorship from Chris, you can't put a price tag on that. And he's really given back to the wrestling business in so many ways. But what he also does is gives to the fans, because some of my favorite stuff in the last few decades involves Chris, and a lot of it's here. And he's just having a great year. And I know people, if they don't watch his shows, it might be hard to believe because you've seen Chris do so much amazing stuff. You may have started watching AEW at the beginning and seen Chris and, you know, thought, okay, this is another progression in Chris's career. Well, it's like a whole nother circle back now. I think it's almost full circle because everything he's learned, his veteran experience, he was really awesome on screen for AEW, but he's in peak physical condition too. And Jericho is somebody who I think in the prime of his career, you associated with physical fitness. And now that he's back in peak physical condition too, because you remember there was that, I think like a hardcore wrestling fan remembers Chris had that like DDP yoga phase, right?
Yep.
Like you remember that. Yeah. And like he would talk about it all the time. I don't even know if I've ever had this conversation with him about like this, that what I'm saying with you, but I would say it to his face. He's like one of my best friends. So like, I would, you know, Chris was like, I was a fan of Chris. He's like DDP yoga. He would talk about it on social media all the time. And you would see it on his body, just shredded. And it's a different, he's got more muscle mass now because he got beefed up, but now he's done like a cut. So, you know, he bulked and did a massive cut. And now he looks, I think, tremendous, but it shows in the quality of the wrestling. And if you have that level of dedication to the craft and that you're going to eat 8 small meals a day to get back to your physical peak, imagine what you're capable of doing backstage. You know, if you're the kind of person who gives back like Chris, which you see all the time, like Chris gives to charities and there's stuff people don't even see. He's like a really generous person. So from the beginning, he's like a really big part of this.
I've got some listener questions now that I'll run by you. The first of which is from our friend Will Washington. He says it's been a while since our last streaming update for the back library. AEW Dynamite obviously a show for wrestling geeks, but us American wrestling geeks don't have a way to watch the last 3 years of Dynamite very conveniently. Is there any update on that?
Yeah, there is. I'm going to continue to work to make sure that the great library we're building is available to the fans in the best possible way. And just getting it available would be a really good start. And it would be very easy to just slap them all up there. And I got other stuff that people have never seen too. For example, a great wrestling show that I'm sitting on, that's a pay-per-view that nobody's ever seen, is The House Always Wins 2021. It is an awesome show. People came out and were like, that is a pay-per-view. Well, we actually did it with a commentary. I guess a good thing to consider it would be like, I called it, what I told the people there was, this is like an ECW arena show, because it's like a tape that eventually people will see, and you all are seeing it like a house show, but we are recording this, there's commentary, you know, and I think it was Tony Schiavone was on commentary, and you know, we had a great thing going. And the first half of the show, Eddie Kingston did, and then Eddie went out and wrestled the second half. And then also in the first half of the show, there was a battle royal, and the winner of the battle royal wrestles Darby at the end of the show. And then I told the crowd, okay, I've got 2 people in the battle royal picked out to do commentary in the second half while Eddie wrestles, because we had a small crew.
Yeah.
So it was like
This sounds awesome. I want,
it
yeah,
was
I want to see this.
it was really cool. And then there's a wild ending and a bunch of great matches, a lot of the biggest stars in AEW, and it's really fun and some great matches. And that's in the library. It's cool. And the Jericho Cruise shows that are in the
Yeah.
library. There are some other really fun things that we've never released and shows that I'm just saying, hey, I'm going to hold these because I think they are great assets. And then I was able to acquire the Ring of Honor library and a lot of really exciting content in there. Some of the best wrestling shows of the past few decades and a lot of the biggest names in wrestling today. And many of them in AEW, but some wrestle in other places and they're big names. And so that's a really exciting library. A lot of it, most of it is HD. And so we've got this really beautiful library from especially everything from the HD net era on that looks great and such big names and a great legacy. Now it's changed because the person who controls the legacy really wants to destroy it and destroy all of pro wrestling. And that is the ultimate sports entertainer. And it is that battle between sports entertainment and pro wrestling that is so beautiful. And I don't know if you've come to appreciate I say this to you because I think you're a great guy and I enjoy doing your show. And I know you like Star Wars a lot. So I don't know if you've picked up on how
Your
Star
Star
Wars,
Wars tweets?
no, how Star Wars, that whole thing is.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
The
Yeah.
whole situation is very, very
Wants to destroy
dark
the
side.
yeah,
And
Jedi.
Chris is very, yeah, it's very, if you look at if you go back and look at like what it's very Star Wars.
I was going to say you had some Star Wars tweets recently that I saw about seeing Return of the Jedi first and all of that. So I thought you were talking about that at first.
Well, I was there was actually a Star Wars because I did fire one off because it was
Yeah.
about comparing Chris the power of the dark side, because I think the power of sports entertainment that Chris has captured, I think is beautiful. And there's nothing I love more than allegorical stuff in wrestling when you can do like fun allegorical stuff like that, or even other stuff that is allegorical satire or alleged allegorical satire. And it's it's the best. And I know you love Star Wars so much, so now if you go back and watch, which hopefully eventually you'll be able to go back and watch everything from the beginning, but when Chris really embraced sports entertainment and pro wrestling, to me, like, it's everything that embodies like the dark side and the force.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love it. Another listener question from Pooch. More nervous for a Jags game, a Fulham game, or a pay-per-view?
Fulham.
Really?
Yeah.
That's the
The
most nervous you
consequences.
get. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. By far. By far. And that is for a variety of reasons, but is definitely, I didn't have to think very hard. It's definitely a Fulham game.
No, yeah, that was an instant answer from you. I like it though. This one from another friend, Sean Ross Sapp. He says, we've heard about you guys going after the Captain Insano IP. Any other fun ones you're going after?
Yeah, I do have some fun ones. I think I can't necessarily say what
It seemed like you wanted to. It seemed like you wanted to say it, but you
that
couldn't.
is a fun one, isn't it? Captain Insano is a really
It's
fun
such
thing
a
we're
fun
doing.
one. Yeah, of course.
And Paul, seeing him, up and around has been great. And Paul White is such an awesome presence in pro wrestling. And when he's healthy and can be on the shows again, I want to feature Paul. He's unfortunately a lot of his time in AEW, he's been hurt. And he's great on commentary when he's able to travel. And I think that's something he has a great future in, frankly. I think he's worked really, really hard at it and deserves opportunities there. And so I have a lot of great things to say about Paul White.
So be on the lookout for fun IP, but you can't say any IP right now.
No, I can't. I
All
think
right, fair
right
enough.
now, one thing that's really great for us in terms of IP is the Warner Brothers Discovery relationship has brought us the opportunity to
Batman?
integrate. Well, that would be pretty cool. I mean, right now I would say like, hey, I wouldn't rule out anything at this point because
Okay.
because to have the opportunities to integrate Shark Week and House of the Dragon
Yeah.
in Dynamite, now you're talking where, okay, I wouldn't leave anything out of the realm of possibility. So who knows? Like, we're getting great opportunities. I can tell you that there will be Winter is Coming again this year. That was using the name Winter is Coming is probably the closest we'd ever just getting to the ability to use the name, which was a huge get a few years ago. That was great. And now having done an entire House of the Dragon episode, and hopefully
Are you watching that? Do you have time to watch that?
I am not. I mean, now you've put me in a terrible position.
Sorry, yeah.
I'm just kidding. But no,
I do a whole podcast about it. So I
I know
even
you
us
do.
out. Look at that. Boom.
I
Dragon right
follow
there for you.
I've not had time to watch that as much. I do. HBO is my favorite channel.
You'll do the full binge when the season's out.
Do you watch Succession?
Oh yeah, love Succession.
That's my favorite show.
The House of the Dragon, honestly, is like Game of Thrones Succession.
Well,
I would compare
Succession's
it a lot.
more my speed, right? Because
Yeah.
like,
Totally. Yeah.
So like
the wrestling business seemed like Succession this year.
It's been an interesting year in the business for sure, and there's certainly things that have happened that would probably be plot lines right out of the great Jesse Armstrong.
Right out of the show.
Jesse Armstrong, who's a Fulham supporter.
Is he?
Cool. Yeah.
Do you know him? I guess
I've not been able in the pandemic to go. I'm really excited to meet him. Honestly, it's one of my things I'm really most excited about in the world.
You got to get a cameo in that. Like you're meeting
I don't
Logan Roy for a.
I don't need. I just think he's so great, and the show's so great. And I think when I found out he was a Fulham supporter, I was really excited. So I actually, that's one of the things I'm really excited about going back over now is to meet him and thank him for all the great shows he has done.
And then fun one to end it here. Last October, we had an interview together where we talked about the scary movie franchise. We talked about Scream movies. We talked about horror movies a little bit. But I didn't get to ask you, what is your favorite Halloween movie or Halloween movie franchise?
Halloween movie franchise. That's tricky. I need to think about that because I'm sure there's a really good answer to this.
Like you, are you a Michael Myers guy? Are you Freddy Krueger guy? Are you a Jason guy? Are you none of those?
What is like
guys?
What is It's a good question. I mean, there's like none of those are like in my actual. I feel like there's something that's because those are all good movies. I'm trying to think. There was probably something that I really really like that takes place around Halloween, but I'm struggling to think of.
Are you like a guy who likes The Crow? You're a guy of the Michael Keaton Batman movies. I like The Crow.
Yeah, I mean, The Crow is a solid movie. That's another really good one. But for I feel like there's a really good answer here. But everything keeps. I keep having like thoughts of pro wrestling, right? Like everything.
You're like Halloween Havoc '98.
Yeah,
the scariest main event you could ever imagine.
That's true. That's true. Or Halloween Havoc '97 and Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero was a great match, and DDP and the Macho Man had a great match on that show, and there's a lot of great stuff there, and then. We've done some really great Halloween shows, I think. And so I'm for Halloween, it's interesting. I feel like there's got to be a movie that I really like that's like on my list of movies that's a Halloween movie. And those are all good movies, but none of those would like crack my like I get real excited to talk about them list. And so maybe it's a hole in my game.
Oh yeah, maybe you gotta brush up on the horror section.
It's not my like, to be honest, it's never like been my thing, and time is tricky for me. I don't have a lot of time, but I it's like I should like let's try to look up like what's a Halloween movie. Like now I feel like
just look up list top Halloween movies.
Yeah, I think it's not going to be okay. Top 100 Halloween movies of all time on IMDb.
Here we go.
So what do you? I mean, yeah. Okay. A Nightmare Before. Oh, okay. So these are not Halloween movies, I don't think. Like Addams Family and Beetlejuice, that's not Halloween, right?
Yeah, I would consider that.
Oh, okay. Then yeah, like Beetlejuice
Halloween.
or Addams Family. Yeah, but like I didn't know those are because they're
not like horror movies, but they're Halloween-y, and then that they're about haunted stuff.
Do they take place at Halloween? Addams Family, they like pour right at the beginning, they do dump the thing on trick or treat. Okay, Addams Family. That's great.
Also, I'm sorry this is rude to look at my phone during an interview, but I just got a tweet from my boss, Dave, and it was in response to my interviewing Tony Khan today, and he questions. And he said, when he got Barstool Van Talk canceled, why did he then invite me to sit next to him at a fight at MSG as his guest and then pretend that I didn't know he was responsible? Did he think I was stupid or that I had forgot or that he was just two-faced? He's talking about Nick Khan. He doesn't realize you're two different people.
Oh man.
That's clearly not you.
Yeah. Do you want to tell
Big Cat
can we tell him?
Big Cat did tell him that is Nick, not Tony.
Wow, this thing's gonna that might blow up. We're definitely not the same guy.
Definitely
Dave.
not the same guy.
Like that probably
that's
explains,
classic Dave though. That's classic. He just
that maybe explains the somewhat icy response I got from Dave the one time I met him in your office. And now things are adding up if he thinks we're the same guy, but we're not the same guy.
He truly does stuff like that all the time, Tony.
But I thought it was, okay. Well, no, he was polite to me, but he didn't seem like super jacked to hang out.
He once tried to fire Michael Rappaport from the company and texted Ian Rappaport, "You're fired." And Ian Rappaport texted back, "Well, I don't work for you, so I don't know how that works."
The rap sheet, that's great. Right? I like. I don't know Michael Rappaport, but I like Ian Rappaport's funny guy.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, man.
Just a crazy thing
Dave,
to happen during this interview.
We're not the same. I'm literally on here with Rob right now. Bob, you think Bob Fox would have a guy on here that would get a Van Talk canceled? Also,
come on, never.
We could not be more different people, Dave. No. We're very different. We have different values. I value the Barstool relationship very differently. Clearly, why would I get Van Talk canceled? I want more Barstool. I'm here all the time.
That was just too funny not to bring up for me.
I literally, not only that, I have like a PMT hat I wear everywhere.
I know you're like the most pro Barstool guy. Yeah.
I wear my PMT hat all over. Because I was very proud to be a guest on PMT. It's a great show. They're both great guys. I really like Big Cat and PFT, both separately. They're really nice people.
Yeah.
And I wear that hat everywhere. And people come up to me and say,
"We'll get Dave sorted." Yeah.
I just want him to know I'm like the biggest Barstool guy. It could not be more on. I would do any Barstool show. I would go to a van.
Yeah.
Like put me in a van. I don't give a shit. Like
no, yeah, we know. Yeah. We know. Yeah. We'll make sure Dave knows.
Well, it's the 3-year anniversary of AEW. So it's
Dynamite,
a great time to celebrate the 3-year anniversary.
Try to get him to watch on Wednesday. Wouldn't that be amazing?
Well, at this point, Dave, at least he could do, Dave, is leave like a TV in your house on TBS on Wednesday and on TNT on Friday. We're totally good.
I'll send him that clip.
Anyway, we're good anyway. But I would be really appreciative.
No.
In general, for anybody. You
deserve that. You deserve that after the mix-up. All right, Tony, thank you so much. Of course, AEW Dynamite, the 3-year anniversary this Wednesday. It's going to be an awesome show in DC, so check it out. If you're in the area, go to the show. That would be a fun time. AEW shows are awesome live. I'm going to be at Full Gear this year. I can't wait for that. Appreciate that. Hooking it up, Tony. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much, Bob. I appreciate it, Robbie, for having me on your show. And if you ever want to do the show in a van, I'm pro Van Talk.
Yeah, pro Barstool. This is the pro Barstool con right here.
I am definitely the pro Barstool con. I'll get on Twitter immediately to see what's going on. But I just really appreciate you having me on to promote the 3-year anniversary. Thanks so much, dude.
Of course. Thank you.
See you, man.